The note was the first thing. Before the world knew her name, before the pictures, before the theories started to spiral out of control, there was the note. It was found on the back staircase of the Ramsey home on the morning after Christmas, 1996. 3 pages, written on a notepad from inside the house with a pen from inside the house. And it's the strangest, most bizarre ransom note anyone has ever seen. It's the key to the whole thing. But it's not the key you think. It's not a clue to find a kidnapper. It's a map of a cover-up. A hidden confession. Let's be real. When you first hear about a ransom note, you imagine something from a movie. A few menacing lines cut from newspaper letters, a simple demand, a clear threat. Get the money, or you'll never see your kid again. Short, brutal, to the point. Because if you're a real kidnapper, time is your enemy. You want to be in and out. You don't have time to sit down at the kitchen table and write a 3-page letter. The JonBenét note is the opposite of that. It's long, it's rambling, it's full of strange phrases and weird self-important declarations. It's a performance. The author isn't just demanding money, they're trying to create a character. They're trying to build a story, and that's the first giant red flag. Real criminals don't build stories. They commit crimes. People who are trying to get away with something, they build stories. Let's start with the basics. The note claims to be from a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. Right away, it sounds fake. It sounds like something a person who has never met a criminal thinks a criminal would say. A small foreign faction. Who talks like that? Not terrorists, not professional kidnappers. It's clunky. It's overly dramatic. It's trying too hard. The note continues, "We respect your business, but not the country that it serves." Again, this is pure theater. It's an attempt to create a motive that has nothing to do with the family. It's a way of saying, look over there, it's political. It has nothing to do with us, the people in this house. And then there's the money. The demand was for $118,000. It's such a specific, odd amount. Why not around $100,000? Why not $1 million? Kidnappers, especially a supposed foreign faction, would likely ask for a significant sum. But $118,000, it feels personal, it feels specific, and it was. Investigators later discovered that John Ramsey had recently received a work bonus for almost that exact amount. The exact figure was a little over $118,117. An outsider would not know that. A random kidnapper snatching a child in the middle of the night would have no idea about John Ramsey's specific after-tax bonus figures. But someone inside the house would, someone who lived with him, someone who knew the family's finances. This isn't a random number plucked from the air, it's a number taken from the family's private life. It tethers the note directly to the Ramsey household. It's a massive mistake. It's the author leaving their own fingerprint on the narrative they're trying to sell. The note is also filled with lines that seem lifted directly from movies. Lines like, if you want her to see 1997, feel like a cheap thriller. The instruction, don't try to grow a brain. John is almost comical. But the most telling parts are the direct quotes. Investigators pointed out phrases that echo dialogue from films like Dirty Harry and Speed. The line, now listen carefully, is very close to a line from Dirty Harry. The demand not to talk to anyone, the specific instructions for the money drop, it all has the feel of a script. This isn't the language of a genuine criminal. It's the language of someone trying to imitate one. It's someone whose only knowledge of kidnapping comes from Hollywood. They are performing the role of a kidnapper. And like a bad actor, they're overdoing it. They're adding too much flair, too many details that don't make sense in the real world. Think about the sheer logistics of it. An intruder breaks into a house in the middle of the night. Their goal is to kidnap a 6-year-old girl and get a ransom. They subdue her without anyone hearing. Then instead of taking her and leaving immediately, they decide to stick around. They find a notepad and a pen in the kitchen, and they sit there for what must have been at least 20 minutes, maybe more, carefully writing a 3-page letter. A letter filled with movie quotes and personal financial details. They do this in a house where 2 other people are sleeping. The risk is astronomical. It defies all logic. A real criminal's priority is speed and stealth. This author's priority was crafting a document, and we know it was crafted. Investigators found a practice draft of the note. On another page of the same notepad, there were the beginnings of the note. The words were crossed out. Phrases were tested. Mr. and Mrs. Ramsey was written, then abandoned. The author was working on it, they were composing it. A kidnapper on a clock doesn't have time for a rough draft. They don't workshop their threats. But someone staging a crime does. Someone who has just committed a terrible act and is now in a state of panic, trying to figure out what to do next. They would need to think. they would need to plan. The practice note is evidence of a panicked mind at work, trying to create an alibi, a story that will lead everyone away from the truth. The truth was in the basement. While the police were in the house, treating it like a kidnapping, JonBenét's body was downstairs, wrapped in a blanket. The note instructed John Ramsey to get the money and wait for a call between 8 and 10 a.m. But that call never came. Of course it didn't. There was no kidnapper to make the call. The author of the note had to know the call would never come. They had to know JonBenét was already dead. This changes everything. This makes the note something much darker. It's not just a fake ransom demand. It's a grotesque piece of fiction written while the author knew the little girl it was about was dead. The threats in the note, "She will be beheaded. If we catch you talking to a stray dog, she dies," are chillingly hollow. They are empty words meant to create a sense of urgency and fear to make the kidnapping seem real. But they are written by someone who knows the child is beyond saving. It's a performance for the police. It's a script for the parents to follow, so who wrote it? The evidence points overwhelmingly to one person, Patsy Ramsey. Forensic handwriting experts analyzed the note and compared it to samples from both John and Patsy. While John was quickly excluded, multiple experts concluded there were strong indications that Patsy wrote the note. They couldn't say it with 100% certainty, the way you can with a fingerprint, but the similarities were numerous and significant. The style of the letters, the phrasing, the quirks, they matched Patsy's known handwriting. And remember, it was her notepad. It was her pen. It was found in her house. She had the means, the opportunity, and, according to experts, the handwriting. If we accept that Patsy Ramsey wrote the note, then the question becomes why? And this is where the note transforms into a confession. It's not a confession to murder. It doesn't say, "I killed my daughter," but it confesses to a cover-up. It confesses to deception. It's a desperate, frantic creation of a person who is trying to hide a terrible truth. Let's imagine a scenario, not as fact, but as a way to understand the note's meaning. Something happened that night. Maybe it was an accident. Maybe it was a moment of rage. Many investigators favor the theory that Patsy was angry with JonBenét over a bedwetting incident, struck her, and accidentally killed her. Or perhaps the theory that her brother Burke, who was 9 at the time, struck her with a flashlight, and the parents decided to cover it up to protect their son. We don't know for sure what happened, but let's assume a tragedy occurred inside the house at the hands of a family member. In that moment, panic takes over. Your child is dead. You are responsible, or your other child is responsible. Your world has just ended. What do? Your mind races. You can't call the police. That would mean telling the truth. That would mean prison, scandal, the loss of your other child. Your mind searches for another option, an escape. And then an idea forms, a story. A kidnapping. It would explain the missing child. It would make you victims, not suspects. So you go to the kitchen, you grab a notepad and a pen, and you start to write. But what does a kidnapper say? You don't know any real kidnappers. All you know is what you've seen in movies. So you start writing what you think a kidnapper would write. You try to sound tough. You try to sound foreign and menacing. Listen carefully, victory. You need a motive, so you invent one about a foreign faction that dislikes John's company. You need a ransom amount. Your mind latches onto a number you know. The bonus. You keep writing, page after page. You're not thinking clearly. You're just pouring out words, trying to make the story believable. You add details about the pickup, the attaché case, the instructions to be well rested. You think these details make it sound more authentic, but they just make it longer, more complicated, and less believable. You're writing for almost half an hour. Your mind is a whirlwind of fear and adrenaline. You threaten to behead your own daughter knowing she's already gone. It's a horrifying act. But in that state of shock and desperation, it's just another line in the script you're creating to save yourself. You finish the note, you place it on the stairs where it will be found. Then you stage the rest of the scene. The broken window in the basement, though nothing about it suggests a real entry. The cord and tape used on JonBenét. You do all this to build on the story you started with the note. The note is the foundation of the entire lie. When you view it this way, the note's true meaning becomes clear. Every strange phrase, every movie quote, every oddly specific detail is a symptom of its creation. It wasn't written by a cold, calculating criminal. It was written by a terrified parent in a state of unimaginable panic. It is a document of pure desperation. The signature, SBTC, is another piece of this puzzle. But what does it stand for? No one knows. Theories range from saved by the cross to something related to John Ramsey's business. But its true meaning might be that it has no meaning. It might just be a random collection of letters chosen to sound like the acronym of a mysterious organization. It's another detail added by the author to make their foreign faction seem real. It's part of the costume. The note is also a confession of the author's mindset. It's written with a degree of education and intelligence. The vocabulary isn't that of a common street criminal. Phrases like, "that's the delivery," and "proper sleeping" suggest a certain background. This aligns with Patsy Ramsey, a former Miss West Virginia, and a woman from a comfortable, educated world. But it's also filled with a strange mix of formality and aggression. It's trying to be two things at once, a sophisticated threat and a brutal demand. And it fails at both. It just sounds bizarre. The note is a psychological portrait of its author at the moment of its writing. It shows us a person who is trying to control an uncontrollable situation. By writing the note, the author is trying to seize the narrative. They are no longer the perpetrator of a horrible event. They are now the victim of a kidnapping. They are following instructions, they are playing a role. The note is their script. It tells them what to do next, call the police, wait for the call, play the part of the terrified parent. And that's what they did. When the police arrived, Patsy and John pointed to the note. The note dictated the first crucial hours of the investigation. It sent the police down the wrong path. It turned a murder investigation into a kidnapping case. It was, for a short time, successful. It bought the author time, it created confusion, that was its primary purpose. But the note is also a failure. It's a failed lie. It's filled with so many mistakes, so many clues that point inward that it ultimately became the strongest piece of evidence against the family. The specific ransom amount, the movie lines, the handwriting, the notepad and pen. The practice draft, the sheer absurdity of its length and location. A real kidnapper would never have left such a trail. A real kidnapper would never have written this note. The note confesses that the crime was personal. It confesses that the perpetrator was familiar with the family's finances and habits. It confesses that the author was an amateur trying to sound like a professional. It confesses that the author had time to sit and compose a letter, time that a real intruder would never have. And most of all, it confesses that the kidnapping was a story, a fiction. And if the kidnapping was a fiction, then the only other explanation is that the crime was committed by someone inside the house. The note's true meaning isn't in its literal words. The threats are empty. The foreign faction is imaginary. The demands are a charade. The true meaning is in its existence. The fact that this note was written at all is the confession. It's a 3-page testament to a lie. It's the sound of someone trying to build a new reality because the real one was too horrific to face. And decades later, we are still talking about it. Because it's not just a ransom note. It's a human document, terrifying in its implications. It's a puzzle box that, once you start to unpack it, reveals not a kidnapper's plan, but a parent's panic. It's a story of what happens in the moments after the unthinkable. It's a confession written in invisible ink. You can't read the words, "I did it." But if you look at the structure, the language, the context, and the sheer impossibility of it all, you can see the truth hidden between the lines. The note is the ghost at the center of the case. It's the author's attempt to speak, but telling a lie instead of the truth. And that lie has haunted this case ever since. It was meant to be a perfect distraction, but ended up being a perfect and permanent confession of deception.